All right, let's talk Nebraska Cornhuskers. Got some really under the radar positive Nebraska news for you guys. Of course, this is a program that's had a really solid offseason. The Matt Rule strategy, his developmental plan for turning this program around is really clicking on all cylinders. So slow and steady success. And this latest news on the recruiting front is further proof of his strategy working. Let's pull up this report, then we'll talk about it more in detail on the other side. This is courtesy of Inside Nebraska. Nebraska has gained its 15th commitment in the 2025 class, and he resides in the 500-mile radius that the Huskers coaches want to lock down. Today, the Huskers picked up the pledge of Sean Hammerbeck, a three-star athlete out of Winter, South Dakota, which is about a 5-hour drive from Lincoln. The 6'7", 250-pounder plays tight end and defensive end for his high school team, but Nebraska projects him to be an offensive tackle at the college level while still holding potential to play on the D-line. All right, this is obviously kind of an under-the-radar move for Nebraska. It's not dominating the headlines, but I think it's part of a larger trend of what Matt Rule is doing there in Lincoln. A great sign going forward. Mize, I'm curious what your thoughts are on this. But first, Nebraska fans, in the comment section below, so far we've seen Matt Rule do a lot of really solid, kind of under-the-radar, low-key moves that I think are really smart for Nebraska. Give us your favorite Matt Rule move, whether it's a recruiting addition, a transfer addition, whatever it may be, maybe a coaching hire that has gone under the radar that you think will have a big impact, and let us know what that is in the comment section below. But Mize, let me throw it over to you now. What are your thoughts on this latest Nebraska move here?
Yeah, Nick, I think this is a great move for Nebraska purely because this is bigger and I think a tougher steal for Nebraska to get than people would realize. Because when you think of North Dakota, South Dakota, there's two teams there in North Dakota State, South Dakota State, who are really, really good at the D1 AA level. They're both very dominant programs, so much so they get a lot of national recognition. So we constantly see players from especially that North Dakota State team make it to the league. They get a lot of eyeballs on them. They really can make it to the NFL draft very easily. So sometimes those hometown guys around that area, I feel like don't have any problems, don't have any qualms going to a little bit of a lower tier school because they know how prevalent they are in today's football zeitgeist. Those teams are very closely watched. But for Matt Rule to come in, a 5-hour drive, that's still pretty far away from Nebraska, and recruit this guy under the radar and get him over to Nebraska, I think this was a big time move because I think this guy is going to be huge in what Matt Rule wants to be the best at. Says he wants to be the best developmental team in all of college football. Getting Hammerbeck seems to be the perfect move for them. This is a guy, like you said, plays defensive end, plays tight end for his team currently, but they wanted to develop him into an offensive tackle. They think he's got the frame for it, and he definitely does at 6'6", 260. I think this is going to be a really, really great pickup for the Cornhuskers just because it fits exactly what they want to do, and they're getting a guy who may not traditionally have been viewed as a tackle from what he did in college, or did in high school, but I think when he moves over to Nebraska, they're going to get one heck of an offensive tackle out of this guy.
You know, when you hearken back to the glory years of the Nebraska Cornhuskers program, you look at what made them great. Everyone looks at elite quarterback play, undeniably so, elite running back play too. But the reality is, the secret sauce of all those championship teams was a physically dominant offensive line built and raised out of the Midwest, right? It was one of those weird anomalies where it seemed like every Nebraska offensive lineman was from some small town in Iowa, Nebraska, one of the Dakotas, something like that, came in and was molded in that strength and conditioning program and in that coaching staff into an elite level physical offensive line superstar across the board. We saw that for decades in Nebraska. That's kind of fallen off for the last 20 years or so. And there's no reason not to. We've seen the Midwest produce a lot of great offensive linemen. We've seen a Wisconsin program. We've seen a Michigan program. We've seen North Dakota State, great example you brought up. They're able to recruit this area the same way Nebraska used to and pull out NFL caliber offensive linemen and develop them into superstars. That's something that Nebraska hasn't been able to do or has chosen not to do, to be totally honest, over the past 20 years. Matt Rule smartly recognizes that's one of the keys to returning the Huskers to their former glory, and I think getting recruiting wins just like this, going deep into the Midwest, these small towns, finding future stars that will be on the offensive line that nobody is paying attention to. Again, an under-the-radar move. We're all focusing on the receivers, the DBs, the tight ends, things like that. Finding developmental offensive line prospects, that doesn't win you the headlines, but if you get enough of these guys into your program and really focus on developing them, this can be the backbone of your entire football team. That's what Matt Rule's trying to build right here, and I think it's just another example of the really smart strategy that Coach Rule and his entire staff is trying to implement for Nebraska.